Well, howdy, fellow gamers. Scale DM Cobb 37. Today is Friday, January 22nd, and it is time for a DH&T. Because for the moment, the youngin' is back in school on Fridays, which means we have our normal game night of Thursday, and I am able to use that time being off on Thursday to do whatever to prep for the game. And then now I'm going to get the kids. My oldest is going to be going away to college, so at some point it's just be me going and getting Isaiah. But that's the way it is. So anyway, today I would like to discuss this campaign so far, this story. The characters are fairly unique. Some are typical of the gamers' style or character choices that they enjoy playing the most. As the DM, I'm tasked with coming up with something that holds their interest and also holds my interest. So this story is loosely based, and by the time this comes out, it won't be that big of a spoiler if any of the players actually watch this. It is loosely based on the Slave Lords modules from the first edition, but I don't have any idea if any of them played those modules or read them. I certainly assume that the ones that have been playing for as long as I have are familiar with those modules, and so that not only allows me, but it almost beckons me to put my own spin on it, create unique slave lords with their own unique backgrounds and motivations, and set it in a different place than what is written in the modules. Now that's not going to stop me from taking anything from those modules that I find to be cool, that I think is cool, and putting them right in there. So far, not so much, but that's of course that's the long game. And for those of you that have watched these DH&Ts before, you realize that I enjoy playing the long game, putting seeds down, letting them grow. It's interesting to watch other DMs online, not necessarily DMing, but talking about what they enjoy about being a DM. And we have very similar, most DMs agree that it's always fun for when your players put clues together and when you're able to surprise your veteran players with new things. So I felt like I did that in the last story that we did. I tried to make something unique that I hadn't even read about in any previous gaming supplements. Now, some of those guys said that they had seen something similar. I'll just have to take their word for it. I don't know. But this will be probably more traditional, go somewhere, defeat the boss, and then follow that to the next stage. Of course, I don't want it to feel like a video game in that respect, and I don't think it will, simply because it's that you can only, like, neither of the two mediums, role-playing games or the video role-playing games, you'll never get the perfect copy or transition, I should say the copy of one to the other, just because it just doesn't work that way. Even if you program a bunch of different ways for a open world video game to go, it will never match up whenever your players do the opposite of what you think they will do. So that's why I'll always favor the tabletop role-playing experience over a video RPG. So as far as the actual story and the game goes, up to this point, they wanted to start off at a little higher level than first level. They all chose third. It doesn't really matter, because there are some encounters that to get the point, to move the story forward, or to get a point across, you're going to set the difficulty as low, and then you're going to set other difficulties high to get the point across that they are not invincible. They don't have plot armor, as my 17-year-old son likes to say all the time about certain characters in video games. They're not going to die, they have plot armor. So, and what that means, for those of you that don't know, is if a character is integral to the story, you can't really kill him off, because then the story doesn't know how to continue on without that character. Now, in a D&D, obviously, if a character dies, a gamer can just roll up a new character. So, intrinsically, there is no, and dare I say this, it's heresy. If you're playing D&D correctly, the death of one character should not stop the entire game from continuing on if everyone else wants to keep playing. So that's just the way I feel about it. No one, since you're there for a shared gaming experience, no one should be so important that their destruction ends everything. Now, an NPC, I could see how that would affect a story, but it should then lend itself to the beginning of the next one if there was that death of the NPC, or the destruction of a magical item, because that could be the end goal of the whole story. Obviously, we have to destroy the One Ring, and they finally did it, and then pretty soon Sam and Frodo were kicking it back in the Shire. So, but if Frodo would have died, would Sam have made it without him? Well, not the way that story was written. But if there were other players, other characters around to help Frodo, then he probably would have made it. It wouldn't be that difficult to write that story that way. So the characters have met several important people, and that's because the game is always more fun if you're hanging out with the cool kids. So they've met the man, the mysterious nobleman in the city, who seems benign, but everyone knows he's not. Only because there's like tunnels under his house, and he has some connection to the Drow city beneath, in the Underdark, way below the city of Tila on top, above ground, I should say. They've met some a religious figure, and his son they've taken on as their I don't know what like a, not their ward or not a servant, but as a member of their group because they wanted a healer. And so the son of the high priest of the Temple of the Blend just happens to, he has been told that's going to be his profession. So, and in the last game, that something happened to that relationship between the boy and the grown-ups, the player characters. So you'll have to watch that to find out. So there's been Drow. There's been some R-rated content, which I don't need to talk about. There's been some fights. There's some avoided fights through some good rolls. Last game there was the players didn't know why I was having them roll. I just told them to roll, and the rolls dictated that something happened or didn't happen. And so they didn't get the help that they probably thought they needed. But that was because of the rolls. As a DM, I like to let the dice have a larger say in the plot or the way the story goes than maybe some other DMs. And I think that's because I'm just so open world up here in my mind. I don't, like I've got a map, but I don't do a lot of detail mapping because you do detailed stuff and then they never go there. And you can always just transplant that detailed thing to a different place in the story and the players would never know, but I would know. So I always leave the thing there. It's very rare I've ever put a lot of effort into a place or a thing and then just because it didn't come up, I've transplanted. I've always just kind of left it where I envisioned it because I always figured I could make up something else, like the old Doritos commercials. Eat as many as you want, we'll make more. And that's the way I feel about encounters and villains. And I used to kind of hold on to villains because I didn't want them to die. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, why can't they die? There's always going to be some idiot evil guy or lady or monster or whatever. And most players that I know, they would prefer to have some type of encounter at least once a game. It doesn't always work out that way though. Sometimes the players have weird tangents that they go off, and a shopping episode can take a long time if they're wanting specialized things, and those don't bother me. I don't mind them shopping. I don't mind playing the innkeeper if I think that there's something to be gained. If I don't think there's anything to be gained, I'll just tell the players, okay, it's book price. You go to the whatever shop, you find the thing. Now, what frustrates them sometimes is they can't get shit ready-made like modern times. And it's just one of those things I refuse to budge on. If anyone that has studied medieval times knows that things were made by hand and they didn't make more than they needed because that was time wasted. And though they didn't think that, to them, their daily lives were, they did what they could do and then they went to sleep. There were specialized instances where there might have been time limits, but normally that just wasn't a thing. The time limits were when the sun was up. So, and when the sun went down, then okay, time's up. And you're not going to let me over, are you? can't see. Okay. Oh, gee, it would help if I... Okay. So, but, you know, that's fine. That's like saying they sometimes get frustrated when they miss an attack. Like, well, I'm not going to say, well, then you hit because you're frustrated. It's like, well, you missed. Sorry. That's just one of those weird non-real laws that I subscribe to, which is, you know, if something has a chance of failure, then you have to roll for it. And even if that chance is only a 1 in 20, you still roll. Because that time that you roll a 1 is so fantastic that it is totally worth making them roll for any other time. So let's see, what else have they done? They met the man, they went on a job for the man, they found a drow city, they found some purple worms, one of them being ridden by a drow. So they know that's a thing. They've encountered some like singing ladies, and the last one that was alive they captured, and then the druid had an omen. It was represented by a bunch of birds that died in a field, and the lady that they captured turned into a giant crow and flew away. So that'll come back some point later. I don't know when. I don't know if they'll ever get to that point, but the name of the story is Ghosts, by the way. So you would assume then that there will be ghosts in this story. And there's some character backgrounds that might have something to do with ghosts or something similar to ghosts. So anytime you can throw in somebody's backstory, it validates the effort they put into writing it. And I think that's important. So the last game we left off, they lost a combat, and a very old NPC of mine that I had used since the early 90s, I believe, during the second age of Skell. When he first started, he was an arch druid. He was way up there, and then I don't know how many years and game sessions of real time went by, but in the third age he came back and he was a Hierophant druid. And I don't even know if they talk about Hierophants in later editions, but in second edition, that's a druid that kind of drops out of the druidic organizations and just does their own thing. And so he did that, and he goes to sleep for a while and then comes out during times that nature calls to him. He's definitely a champion of nature. And unfortunately, I have a stereotypical bent towards druids, like kind of being very like not politically correct, or you could say mean or rude or tactless. You could give any one of a million descriptions, and that's because they think along the lines of what is best for the natural world, and they don't tend to have time to waste on any of the trappings of civilization, one of those being etiquette. So if you could say that would be a shortcoming of my role-playing of druids. I don't have a huge diversity of my role-playing of druids. I guess because I always think of them as like human animals with brains. So they think a lot about from their instincts and what they see with their senses. And I don't think of animals as having etiquette, even though probably science channels and nature channels would show that there's an etiquette with some animals. I just don't know what they are. So just kind of hand waving that the druids that I always NPC, they're very like, well, I don't like you and you're interesting and I don't really care about your feelings. I'm not setting out to hurt your feelings, but I don't care about them. So if they get hurt along the way, whatever, doesn't really matter. And I always think that the druids understand that death is a part of life, and that's part of the cycle. So it was nice to bring him out. I found his figure. If you look at the last upload, which is going to be in a couple hours, it's going to go up on YouTube. Now, I streamed to Facebook Live, but then I upload the game to YouTube after the game's over and have it premiere on Friday. I usually try for like 5 p.m. Central Time, set 6, somewhere in there, somewhere in the afternoon. It doesn't really matter, nobody watches. But, so I forgot why I was even talking about that. Anyway, this is a long DH&T. I apologize for taking so long, but we haven't spoken in a while. So obviously, if we still have some people that are playing online, but the thing with Jason and the echoing, I think, was solved last game. He's got a good headset with a on and off for his touch to talk. That cut way down on the echo, so that's plenty good now. If this is as good as it gets, it's good enough. I'm not at all frustrated with that. So anyway, any thoughts or comments, you know to put them down below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you really like this kind of stuff. I don't have a Patreon and I don't need your money, so just enjoy some live D&D, and if you can play yourself, get together with some friends and hang out during the COVID times, you're fortunate and lucky. Anyway, this is Skell DM Cobb 37 saying, roll them 20s.